In this video, I want to share with you a route that I ride from the Greensboro area to Yanceyville and then to Milton, North Carolina. From there, I cross over to Hyco Lake and through Roxboro and head back home north of Burlington. This is a fun and easy ride. You will ride through some beautiful and hilly farmland. But what makes this ride interesting is the history of this area. For more information about this ride, check out my website. The link is down in the description. Okay, let's get to it. Today's route begins in a sleepy suburb of Greensboro named Summerfield, as does our story. This story begins small, an event hardly worth noting. It starts with the death of a chicken. The American Civil War had just ended, and a man by the name of John Stevens saw a chicken in his yard. Now, John eyed this chicken briefly before he pulled the trigger of his gun and shot it. John picked up the remains and promptly returned them to his neighbor. John's neighbor did not find his antics amusing and went to the sheriff. For this, John spent the night in jail. Now, as some accounts have it, the next day, when John was released from jail, being unhappy with his recent circumstances, he approached his neighbor and pulled his revolver. Somehow, the revolver accidentally went off and shot two bystanders. Now, strangely, there were no additional charges filed against John. As you can guess, John's popularity with his neighbors suffered, so he packed up and skedaddled over to Yanceyville, which happens to be our first stop on our ride. Okay, so let's quickly recap here. Stevens was sent to jail for killing a chicken. Then he accidentally shot not one, but two people, which was frowned upon, but no legal action was taken. The 1800s was a really curious time. As a side note, John Stevens had lived in Summerfield, but his trouble over the chicken happened while he was living in Wentworth. On the ride over to Yanceyville, you will enjoy some relaxing riding and beautiful farmlands. The roads will get more hilly as you get closer to Yanceyville. Before the Civil War, Yanceyville was a very wealthy area. As a matter of fact, it was the wealthiest county in the entire state. This wealth came from an innovation in the curing of tobacco leaves. This invention led to a booming tobacco industry that increased the crop yields many times. These giant yields led to wealth for even the smallest tobacco farmer in this area. This prosperity led to the construction of a beautiful antebellum courthouse. Construction started just before the Civil War, and the building still stands today. This courthouse is where our story about John Stevens continues. During the Civil War, John was an impressment agent for the Confederate Army. His job was to look for young men not fighting in the war. He would arrest them and send them off to the front lines. After the Civil War, John switched sides and became a politician opposing the white Democratic minority in Caswell County. Stevens helped to politically organize the majority black population here, making him very unpopular with many people. Remember that chicken from the beginning of our story? Stevens' political rivals used this story against him and called him John Chicken Stevens. However, with the support of the black community, he was elected to the North Carolina Senate. There was a great deal of backlash against Stevens. He was expelled from his church, accused of all kinds of crimes, and his life was eventually being threatened. Eventually, Stevens was tried in absentia by the Ku Klux Klan and sentenced to death. One day, Stevens had come to the courthouse when a group of men attacked and restrained him. They dragged him down to the basement where he was strangled by a noose and stabbed 3 times. Nobody was brought to justice for this crime. There was a man by the name of John Lee. He was the local leader of the KKK. He wrote a confession about the events surrounding John's murder. His confession was held for over a decade by the North Carolina Historical Commission and was not opened until after his death in 1935. Stevens' family moved away but was not able to sell their house due to the stigma of these events. 36 years later, the house was finally sold and became a school for the children of freed slaves. The story does not end here and will continue in Alamance County. This courthouse is a beautiful building. You can park behind it and enjoy a small botanical area. The old jailhouse is unoccupied but still stands behind the courthouse. There are a couple of restaurants near the courthouse and a small historical museum. Next, we'll be heading over to Milton. Milton is a great little town nestled along the border of North Carolina and Virginia. Milton's small historic downtown is a wonderful place to visit. Millie's restaurant is a favorite of mine, and you will usually see a lot of bikers here on the weekends. Millie's has a great pizza buffet. The inside is a slice of Americana. Now, I plan on doing another route that passes through Milton. In this video, I will explore its history more deeply and talk about its most distinguished resident, Thomas Day. Virginia International Raceway is close by, making this a good route if you want to stop over and enjoy some of the activities at the raceway. However, you may want to look for lodging in Danville, which is just up the road a bit. Alright, from Milton, we're going to cross Hyco Lake on our way down to Roxboro. If you like to camp, Hyco Lake has a good campground right on the shores of the lake. We will head into Alamance County after riding through the town of Roxboro. Now, in Alamance County, we're going to be riding north of the town of Graham, where our story continues. In 1870, a black town commissioner and constable by the name of Wyatt Outlaw lived. In an attempt to intimidate the constable, the local clan rode through town dressed in their white hooded garb. Wyatt opened fire on the clansmen without any injury. Since Wyatt stood up to the clan, they came back for him. In the cover of night, the clan dragged Wyatt out of his house and lynched him in front of the courthouse on the courthouse square. At this point, Governor Holden decided to take action against the clan. He declared that the counties of Caswell and Alamance to be in a state of insurrection. The governor brought in Colonel George Kirk to restore order. Holden suspended habeas corpus and imposed martial law, and so began the Kirk-Holden War. Colonel Kirk marched on Yanceyville and arrested approximately 100 men. The Klan retaliated by marching on Pittsburgh with the intent of taking it over. However, Kirk mustered his forces and pursued the Klan into the woods of Chatham County, where a few skirmishes were fought. A few months later, Kirk's forces were disbanded and the conflict was over. Unfortunately, the state legislature flipped and Governor Holden was impeached, tried, and removed from office for his efforts. Kirk was arrested in Tennessee and sent back to North Carolina for trial. As fortune would have it, Kirk was secretly released and sent back to Tennessee, avoiding any kind of trial. Later, North Carolina Senate pardoned Governor Holden, in which he replied, "How can you pardon me from a crime that I didn't commit?" On this route, we have gone from the death of a chicken to murder, threats, military action, and political intrigue. The story we started with has ended, but we have one more town to talk about: Ossipee. Ossipee is what you might call a sleepy town. In fact, it is so laid back they did not get around to incorporating until 2002, a mere 124 years after its founding. Not much happens here, but if a place is left alone long enough, inevitably, something will eventually happen there, no matter how sleepy it is. In Ossipee, almost 90 years ago, this moment happened. It was a Friday in the month of August of the year 1934. 4 machine gun menacing bandits driving a car from Tennessee held up the Ossipee branch of Burlington Mills. Now, unlike today, where people are paid in the form of checks or electronic deposits, in 1934, most businesses paid their employees with cash. As history would have it, this group of men came on a day they thought the mill would be rife with cash. They came on payday. Now, luck was not on their side this day. The robbers left with only $200. They locked 6 people in the vault and kidnapped 2 young women. These women were released half an hour later in Liberty, North Carolina, with the vault keys. Before the girls could return, the people locked inside the vault broke the lock from the inside and escaped, and these ne'er-do-wells were never captured. In Ossipee, a great place to stop and stretch your legs is at the Altamaha Dam on the Haw River. This is a pullover area by the bridge. From here, you can cross the footbridge, walk down to the dam, kick off your boots, stick your feet in the water for a spell, and just stretch your legs and relax. Okay, from here we're going to head back through the wonderful farmland strewn roads that take us to Summerfield. Well, that's the end of our stories and the end of our ride. I hope you enjoyed it. When you are riding, remember, watch out for those crazies, and as always, good riding and be safe.